Hi everyone, I'm here with Gretchen and I am so happy to share her story with you guys because I just love her. She is no nonsense. I love you to death, but you're gonna hear it kind of girl. And we need people like her in our lives. She's gone through the divorce experience, so I think she's gonna be a blessing by sharing her story with us. So, thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, Jeannie.
So,
well, let's see. So I got married the first time when I was 19. Actually, I was 20 when I got married the first time. Fell in love, fresh out of high school, and I just thought that he was it. And I broke off the engagement because I didn't feel like I was ready, and all the money I had saved for my wedding, I took off to Australia with some friends. But when I came back, he wanted to get together and just talk, and we ended up getting back together. And I remember my mom saying to me, I knew when you started dating him again that you weren't gonna not marry him because you didn't want to hear the rest of us say I told you so. Because my family was just like, they just didn't think I needed to be getting married at 21 years old. So I did push forward, and my mom was right. I did marry him because I didn't want to fail. It was important to me to, be successful, whatever it was I was doing, even if it was a relationship. So we got married, and I remember on our 1-year wedding anniversary sitting in a restaurant, and I just looked at him and I'm like, I'm so unhappy. Like, I don't want to be married. And I loved him like a brother, and I was more interested in staying with him because I loved his family unit. Like, my family was dysfunctional. My parents had gotten divorced a couple of years prior, so I craved the family unit, which his parents were absolutely amazing. And I loved his family, and that's what I think I bought into. Right. And he was very clingy. I mean, it's crazy because you think like, you want what you don't have and you don't want what you do have. Well, he was one of those guys that I always had fresh flowers. He would not go to sleep without caressing my hair every night. It was almost like suffocating. And I loved it, but it's like, give me some space, right? And he was 5 years older than me, but he adored me, but it just wasn't there, right? And so I tried to get away, I tried to leave, and he just wouldn't let me. Well, at the time he was working third shift at a manufacturing plant, and I was working in the restaurant business. And I called one of my girlfriends, and I'm like, I don't know where I'm gonna go, but can I just stay at your parents' house on the sofa? I was 22, and I packed whatever I could into my Honda Accord, and I took off in the middle of the night because I knew that I was too afraid to face him. I had to do it where he couldn't stop me. Convince me otherwise. And so I did. I left that night with whatever the clothes that I could fit into my car. I mean, I left all of my yearbooks, all of my pictures, everything that was a part of me, because at that point I thought I was going to be able to go back. He was so angry with me. He burned all of my yearbooks, all of my pictures. I have no memories from my past because he was so angry that I did that. But I stayed at my girlfriend's couch for one night, and then I rented an apartment month to month because I just didn't know, and I didn't want to make a long-term commitment. I was paying like $900 a month at 22 years old. This was back in the early 90s, so that was a lot of money.
A lot of money, yeah.
And I remember I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to be with him, but I didn't want to be alone. So I got 2 cats. I got a dog, which I still have a little puppy here. I have lots of dogs. And I had 5 or 6 of my girlfriends had keys to my apartment. And somebody was always coming in and out of my apartment because I didn't want to be alone.
Right.
So that was my first experience. I mean, we ended up getting divorced, and it was, I mean, he was just nasty. I mean, I remember when his father passed away, and I called just to give my condolences, and he completely chewed me out, like, how dare you? And
wow.
But, I heard him. It was a pride thing, a shame thing. Right. So looking back, I know I probably shouldn't have married him in the first place, but I made the choice to get married. And as a Christian, I live with a lot of guilt because it's like, I really didn't try. I didn't want to be there.
Did you grow up in church?
I did.
Okay,
I knew better. I knew what the word said. I was raised in the church. At that time in my life, I was like the prodigal child. So being a Christian was not on my radar.
Yeah.
I knew what I knew. I knew what I believed. I knew I was saved. I knew I was going to heaven. But his faith was not something we ever talked about. We never went to church together.
Yeah.
And I was 22 years old, just being a young adult, you know, working in the restaurant business and just.
Yeah, you didn't know.
And I went from my parents to him.
Right.
I didn't live on my own. I didn't do anything on my own. So I really didn't have an opportunity to experience life.
Right.
You know, 50 years ago, that was normal. But
Right.
now, I mean, I can't even imagine having a 21-year-old daughter. If she was to come home and say, Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow, I would just be like, what? You have
Slap the
such
crap out of her.
yes, you have such a huge life to live. So why stop? So we actually did not get divorced right away because he wasn't in a hurry.
Right.
And he certainly wasn't willing to pay for it. And so I continued to move on with my life.
And you were 22 or 23?
I was 22 at the time when I left him, and I was working in the restaurant business. I was in management, and I worked my way up that corporate ladder, and I used to go out country dancing all the time and just enjoying life. Well, I met somebody, and we ended up dating, and it was a whirlwind romance. We got together super quick, and we started dating in May, and the following April, he asked me to marry him, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm kind of still married.
Right.
Even though it's been 4 years, because at this time I was 25, it was about 3.5 years. I'm like, I have to get divorced first. And so he asked me to marry him in April, and I filled out the paperwork on my own. I just went down to the courthouse and got the packet that they get for like a simplified dissolution of marriage.
Right.
Filled it out, and you know, I notified him. He didn't show up to court. He ended up getting a credit card in my name and putting a down payment on a Mazda Miata.
Oh no.
Yes. So of course, when I went into the judge, they gave me a judgment against him that he had to pay me X number of dollars, but that would mean that I would have to enforce that, which means that I have to pay more money for attorneys and all that other stuff. So
Yeah.
I just let it go. It's like, whatever. I just want the divorce paper.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And I ended up getting engaged in April of 97. We got married in August of 97. I was pregnant in December of 97. I mean, it was whirlwind super quick.
Wow.
And at that time, I thought I was going to make it super big in the network marketing world. This is back in the 90s, and prepaid phone cards were really big.
Yeah.
You know, the ones with all the numbers where there's like a gazillion numbers.
Hey, Cody.
Sorry, that was one of my other dogs. It's okay, buddy.
Oh, he's old.
So I thought I was going to make it big in the network marketing industry, and I quit my job.
Wow.
Working in the restaurant business, making management. I was making great money. I was working a lot of hours, but my husband at the time owned a commercial cleaning company, and he's like, well, just come and work for me. And so I was doing network marketing on the side and working for him doing sales, and his niche was he cleaned restaurants. Well, I knew every restaurant manager in town.
Right.
So I came, and the network marketing thing just wasn't for me, and I helped him to build a really lucrative cleaning company. I got pregnant 4 months after we got married. My daughter was born in September. 3 weeks later, I was pregnant again.
Oh,
yes, you're not supposed to have sex that soon after you have a child, but you're very fertile, and I was married to a Latin man who did not understand the word no. So my oldest two children are 10 months apart. So you can imagine, I'm going through postpartum and all of that, the blues. I'm trying to nurse my daughter who has extreme colic and reflux and all this other stuff. And in the process, I'm pregnant with another child.
Yeah, see, we have sound effects just for all this. What happened? Oh my gosh.
So we ended up in 2003, we opened up a construction company in the paving business. And from there, we just worked, we built, and I had another kid. So I have 3 children. They're 21, 20, and 17 now. It was May of 2017 was kind of D-Day for me. And I'm a very type A dominant personality, and so is he. I mean, we butted heads a lot, but as soon as I got pregnant with my first daughter, I had this overwhelming sense that I need to go to church. Like, if I'm going to have a kid, I want to bring my children up in the church. I want them to have the foundation that I have. Right. And my husband was not opposed to it. I mean, he was raised Catholic, but he was like, yeah, he goes, let's go. And so thankfully we did start going to church, and I did have, I started really developing a relationship with God and with other Christian and other believers, and I had other women around me. But I really lived in a glass house, Jeannie. Like, my head was, I was like an ostrich. And as soon as I would feel like my house was going to start crumbling, I would put my head in the sand because I don't want to know. Yeah. I don't want to know. And I created this fake sense of who I thought my life was. Because certainly I wasn't going to get divorced again, because what would everybody think about me? Right. I'm not going to fail twice. Yep. I'm the only person in my entire family on both sides that has ever been divorced, besides my parents. So it's like, I didn't want to have this generational curse that I'm bringing down, and now I'm going to bring it into my own house. So I was willing to do whatever it took to save my marriage.
Right. And I feel like from your first time you got married to the second, I mean, did you feel like healed in between, or was it just work, party, and then
yeah. No, I didn't. Like, I didn't take any. I look at the first marriage as, I should have never got married. It was like a relationship that I chose to put a piece of paper of marriage in there. It wasn't like,
because you thought that's what you had to do.
I felt like I felt like that's what I needed to do. And so, and I don't know why. I mean, I remember on my 18th birthday, and my parents were very traditional, and my dad is one of those guys that just was not, he wasn't really engaged. And I knew he loved me, but his way of saying I love you is, love you, babe. But it was very much like a friendship kind of a thing, but not even a friendship. Like, he was non-existing. I grew up, my father was not really around. He was there, but he wasn't engaged. And when I turned 18, my boyfriend at the time, because we were not married yet, his parents had a timeshare and over in Daytona Beach, and they said that they would give it to us so that we could stay there for the weekend. I'm like, I'm 18 years old. I want to go to Daytona Beach. Right. And so I told my parents, because I'm like, well, I'm 18. They can't tell me no. My father looked at me and said, as far as I'm concerned, you can't wear a white dress to your wedding, and you're going to shack up for your honeymoon. And I was crushed. Wow. But at this point, it's like, okay, if I go, he's going to be disappointed. If I don't go, then he's controlling my life. Right. So I got in the car and I went to Daytona. And it was the worst trip of my life. I cried the entire weekend because I'm like, I'm sure it was the first time that my father realized like that I was not a virgin. Like, I was having sex with a guy. Yeah. And that was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah, because as a little girl, our dad is our hero, and and actually the way that he was relating to you, like telling you I love you, you was still empty. Like,
well, yeah, I craved validation and acceptance from my father, but he really wasn't a words guy, and he was not a touchy-feely kind of guy. I mean, very German and stoic, so there wasn't that affection, and I was always craving it. And I had a guy who adored me, gave me constant words of affirmation, buying me flowers, caressing my hair. I mean, he was a product of his father. Like, this is what his father did for his mother. So he really did all the right things, but I didn't know how to accept that. Right. It was almost like I didn't feel like I was worth it to receive that. I felt smothered. Like, I self-sabotaged that whole relationship. And I really I did do counseling through that. And what I realized was, this is what my counselor said to me. He's like, Gretchen, you're like this red blob, like this red ball, and your husband is a blue ball. And when you get married, you're supposed to come together to become purple as one. But instead what happened is, you're red, he's blue, you were doing this and he wasn't moving. And you were becoming blue. And he says, because of that, you were losing your sense of yourself. Yes. And so you were starting to like pull back. And in that situation, he was 100% right, and I recognized it, and I did what I did. Right. Fast forward to my second marriage, same exact thing happened. But now I have 3 kids because we had kids right away. I have a business, I have a home.
So things just got more complicated.
Things got way more complicated. And I'm like, I don't want to be a single mom with 3 kids. Yeah. I don't want to be divorced a second time. So no matter what, I was still not being true to who I was. I wasn't embracing Gretchen and everything that I am.
It got worse because now you're going to make it work no matter what. Like a square peg in a round hole. You know, just try to fix it because I'm not going to be divorced second time.
Exactly.
But this time, how did it become apart?
Well, in May of 2017, it all fell apart because I finally found out that he was having an affair. And it was horrible. It was horrible, but we sat, when I confronted him about it, and it actually was one of our customers. So we were in the construction business, and I knew who this person was. And it was devastating. And I looked at him, and he didn't think that I knew who it was. He tried to play it all off, but when he realized that I knew, he's like, all right. He goes, well, what do you want? You want the house? You want this? It's almost like he had been planning this entire thing. And I just looked at him, and at this point, let's back up a year and a half, 2 years. I rededicated my life to Christ. I was 100% focused on my relationship with God. And at this point in my marriage, my husband flat out told me, he goes, I am jealous of God because you spend more time with him than you spend with me.
Wow.
I mean, when he verbally said that, I'm like, you're jealous of God? Like, I didn't understand. It didn't make sense to me.
Right.
So that day, D-Day for me, Discovery Day, and I said something to him, and he said, what do you want? You want the house? You want this? You want that? And I remember crossing my legs Indian style and just putting my hands, and I literally had like this smirk on my face, and I just was shaking my head, which is not my personality. For me to do something like that, I'm sarcastic, but I'm very submissive to my husband at that point. Yeah. And he's like, why are you mocking me like that? And I said, you underestimated who you married. He goes, what does that mean? I said, I married you for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and health, till death do us part. I said, I'm not the one with a choice to make here. You're the one that has to choose. Me and our children and our family and our life, or some person that is giving you pleasure because that's what you're choosing to do.
Yeah.
That literally, Jeannie, started War of the Roses. For the next 6 months, my house was a war zone because he wanted me to kick him out so he could tell everybody I kicked him out. And then he could go and do his own thing.
Right.
But I didn't do that. I did everything I could to save my marriage, and it was like two rams bucking every day.
Yeah, he had a plan, and he wanted to get out.
Yep.
Wow.
So, I mean, we went through a lot of highs and lows. I took on a lot of emotional abuse because, again, I didn't want to get divorced. And I thought that I truly loved this man, but what I realized was I didn't know this man at all. Right. He lived a completely different life. And, I mean, I don't really want to get into all of his stuff, but there was
How did you find freedom? How did you
I found freedom. I went to a support group. I went to a support group.
Which is important. You
it is so important because here's the thing. I had an incredible, and when I say incredible, Jeannie, I had some of the most amazing, strong women of God around me. I mean, you've met a lot of them. You saw a lot of them yesterday. They are prayer warriors. They know the word. Strong, strong women, but they're not safe women because they're in happy marriages. They've never been divorced.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is, as soon as I would take my husband back, and they're looking at me like I am absolutely freaking nuts. Like, why did you do that? He did this and this. Like, what's wrong with you? Which would make me feel worse about myself. Yeah. But until you're ready to make a decision to do stuff, what I found in that support group, we all had a common denominator. Every woman in my support group, when I was in that, it was a small group of 6 women. Every one of us had been betrayed sexually in one way or another.
Wow.
And so it was a safe place for me to be able to start out by just being angry and bashing everything he did without being judged because they were doing the same thing. But what happened through that process was we realized, well, I'm the common denominator in my story. I'm the common denominator from my last marriage to this marriage and every relationship in between. I'm the common denominator. Yeah. So it's like, okay, what do I need to change? I can't change him. I can't cure him. I didn't cause what he did. I can only focus on me. Yeah. And when I took my focus off of my husband and I put my focus back on me, And I recognized, where was God in all of this?
And what does he want for you?
And what does he want for me? I remember sitting out back crying, just pleading to God, like, God, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't know. I'm like in this limbo. Because at this point I had kicked my husband out and he wasn't living here. And I heard God as audibly, and I don't hear God audibly, but I heard him say, I want you to fear me.
Wow.
Jeannie, I was in tears. I wept.
Yes.
Because I never realized that all of my decisions, everything I did, was based on fearing my husband. And everything, I shouldn't say everything, a lot of decisions that I made, I know that God was weeping over my decisions. But because of free will, he allowed me to make those choices.
Right. Yes.
But because of the choices I made, I suffered the consequences.
Yeah.
God wanted me to fear him, and that meant that I needed to recognize what his word says. And God doesn't want me to be abused. God doesn't want me to feel the way I was feeling, and I needed to walk in the integrity of what his word says.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of times, like for me, like I was actually idolizing the relationship in my husband, and he's a jealous God, so he wants us to focus on him, and he comes first.
That's right.
And you're right, like when he said that, I mean, I get goosebumps because we need to fear him.
Yeah.
And then, like we delight in him, he'll give us the desires of our heart. So, but it made you who you are today.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's admirable because you are able to empower a lot of women, and you've come up with, God is literally like giving you the Pearl Academy, which is amazing because that's how we met and we meet.
Yeah.
And you're going to empower, and you empower women to, because even through all that, you grew. Even though your personality was being like, at home you were like the submissive wife, but God turned everything for good because you.
What it was, Ginny, was when I went through all of that support group.
Yes.
I realized the one common thread, because to me, one of the things that God has revealed to me is every experience that we have in our life leads you up to whatever it is that your purpose is. I didn't go through the relationship that I did with my dad, the relationship I had with my first husband, the relationship I had with my second husband. I'm the common denominator.
Yeah.
So really reflecting back on, okay, what is the common thread of those experiences that were in all of those experiences, and that I can speak wisdom in other people so that they can impart on my wisdom to be able to learn from that. Because the reality is there's nothing under the sun that somebody hasn't experienced.
Yeah.
But if we keep everything locked up in shame in our own little closet, our own little skeletons, two things are happening. Number one, you're living in complete jail. Like there is not freedom. That's what the enemy wants. He wants you to keep your story locked up because then he can keep you quiet. He knows he can't keep me from the kingdom of heaven because I am saved by the glory of God. And I know that. But he can keep me locked up in shame where I cannot make an impact for the kingdom for other people.
The shame, the failure.
The shame and the failure and all that hopelessness.
Are pieces of a puzzle. And by coming closer to God and having him in our life, he gives us the clarity to be able to put these pieces together and create a beautiful picture.
Right.
Which is where you are right now.
Right.
In your life.
And that's what the Pearl Academy is. I want to empower female women. Now, my story is, what's my common denominator? I lost my voice. I allowed strong men to come into my life and muffle my voice. I want to help female entrepreneurs because I'm an entrepreneur. I can speak their language. That's my common denominator. I'm a female who lost her voice, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a go-getter. I'm the one that is going to drive and do. And I want to achieve. I am achievement-based. And you know what? I'm not ashamed to admit that. But I need to do it because I'm partnering with God in my business. I've never done that before. I always said I did, but no. God is my partner. And the hardest part for me in my journey, when I was alone going through that support group, what I realized, I needed to learn how to be okay being alone. Because I'd never been alone. I went from my parents to my husband to 6 girlfriends having keys to my apartment to dating my current ex-husband And moving in with him after 30 days. We were dating for 30 days and I moved in with him. I had never been
kids.
alone.
And then right away
and then kids. Which I have my kids here, but they're older, so they're not home.
Yeah.
And Jeannie, when I tell you, you know how you read scripture and it's like, okay, it's just words on paper. It's like, I don't get it. I don't see what you're trying to say to me. It was during this time of me being on my knees, just in total surrender to God, because I had nothing left. It was all just God. My hands just up like, what do you want me to do? And it was at this point where the scripture that talks about, having the peace that surpasses all understanding and having joy in the storm, I truly understood what that meant. Mm-hmm. I would meet people at, because I was a greeter at church, and at this time I had to stop doing all that, because every time somebody would go, oh, are you okay? And I would start sobbing at church trying to greet people. And so I took everything off my plate. Yeah. And for a year, for 2018, this was my year. My word for the year was courage.
Yeah.
And it was just to have courage to go through this season. Yeah. And I learned how to smile even though I didn't feel good. Yeah. I learned that it's going to be okay. It may not be what I had planned, but God is going to use this plan for good.
Yeah, and I see courage, but courage to be intimate with the Father.
Yes.
Like the courage that it took for you to get on those knees and then to say, God, that's it, I'm done. And
Jeannie, I didn't realize how prideful I was. Because that's what it was. I was so prideful, I didn't want to let my walls down. I was afraid to be vulnerable. I was afraid to be authentic. But that was the lie. I literally feel like I had a mask on for 23 years. And it's nobody's fault but my own. I can't blame my husband. I can't blame anybody. I allowed that mask to come on because I didn't want to show people the real me. And part of the Pearl Academy that I'm working on, I want women to embrace and be proud that God made you uniquely you, exactly how you are. He made your personalities, your desires, your abilities, whatever. He made you exactly how he did. Mm-hmm. We need to embrace it and not apologize.
That's right.
Like, I probably am going to offend people because I say things sometimes that I probably need to be careful of.
We want people like that. We don't want someone that's going to be like...
The people that are closest to me, they will tell you, you know what? She can be a little harsh, but she's always truthful. And if you know her heart, she's saying it with a lot of love.
That's right. And I love that. And I think that when we become intentional... that's when you have the breakthrough.
Yes.
You have to step from being a victim to being intentional.
It's a choice. Choice. It's a choice. There are women that were in my Bible study or in my support group that are still stuck.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. I could not. And they look at me, they're like, I don't understand. I'm like, number one, I made a choice to partner with God. Yeah. And that was the difference. I had to literally let go of a lot of friendships.
And that's important too.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that were not safe. And they're still my friends, but in a different way. Yeah. They don't intimately know some of those stories because they weren't safe people to share with. Yeah. Me sitting here having a conversation with you, you have had a similar situation. So when I speak, you're like, oh, I totally get it. Yeah. And that's important. Yeah. You don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed of where you get. Don't be ashamed of your story. You need to share it. Yes. And the more you speak it, the more freedom you're going to be.
Yeah, your story matters. But thank you, because I was going to ask you what are the last parting words, but there you go.
Yeah.
I love
Share
you.
Your story. I love you too.
Oh, thank you, Jeannie. You're awesome. You're amazing.